Dr. Velnara stared at her datapad in complete disbelief. The bright red warnings flashing across her screen made no sense at all. For the past 3 weeks, reports had been coming in from every corner of the galaxy about humans and their eating habits. But these weren't normal eating habits. According to her instruments, humans were eating poison. Actual, deadly poison. She rubbed her 4 eyes with her tentacles and looked at the screen again. Maybe the translation software was broken. Maybe there was some kind of error in the data collection. But no matter how many times she checked, the results were always the same. Humans were consuming substances that would kill most known species in the galaxy within minutes. Her research partner, Dr. Thexmal, floated over to her workstation. His blue skin had turned a worried shade of purple, which happened whenever he was stressed. "The reports are getting worse," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "The humans on Kepler Station are apparently eating something called hot sauce on everything they consume." Velnara felt her stomach turn. Hot sauce. Even the name sounded dangerous. She had studied hundreds of different species across the galaxy, but nothing had prepared her for this. How could any species survive by eating poison? It went against everything she knew about biology. She decided she had to see this for herself. The Axiom Research Collective had sent her to study human behavior, but she never expected to be documenting what appeared to be mass suicide by food consumption. She packed her observation equipment and headed to the human section of the space station. Station Kepler 7 was a massive trading post that served dozens of different species. The human section was always busy, filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation. Velnara set up her equipment in a corner where she could watch without being noticed. She activated her bioscanner and pointed it toward the human dining area. That's when she saw Jiho. He was a maintenance worker, wearing the standard blue jumpsuit that human technicians wore. Nothing about him seemed unusual at first. He looked like any other human she had observed before. Average height, dark hair, friendly smile. But then he sat down to eat his lunch, and Velnara's world turned upside down. Jiho pulled out a small container and opened it. Immediately, Velnara's scanner started going crazy. Red lights flashed everywhere. Warning signals beeped so loudly that she had to turn down the volume. The substance in the container was registering as a Class A biotoxin, the same classification they used for chemical weapons, but Jiho didn't seem worried at all. In fact, he seemed happy. He was humming a little tune as he sprinkled the toxic substance all over his food. Velnara watched in absolute terror as he took a big bite and smiled with satisfaction. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself. Her scanner was showing that Jiho had just consumed enough poison to kill a Vorthon warrior in less than 10 seconds. But there he was, chewing happily and reaching for more. Dr. Thexmal floated up beside her, his skin now a deep shade of worried purple. "What are those readings?" he asked, looking at her scanner. "Capsaicin concentrate," Velnara replied, her voice barely audible. "Enough to stop a Matharian's heart instantly." They both stared at Jiho, waiting for him to collapse, waiting for the poison to take effect. But instead, he just kept eating. He even started laughing at something he was watching on his personal device. That's when Jiho noticed them staring. Instead of being angry or suspicious, he smiled and waved. He got up from his table and walked over to them, still carrying his container of deadly toxins. "Hey there," he said in a friendly voice. "You two look like you've never seen Korean food before." Velnara tried to speak but couldn't find her voice. How was this human still alive? How was he even standing? Jiho held up a small red pod that made Velnara's scanner start beeping again. "This is a gochugaru pepper," he explained. "Want to try some kimchi? My wife Minji made this batch last week. She added extra peppers because she knows I like it spicy." The word spicy made both aliens step backward. Spicy meant painful. Spicy meant dangerous. In their languages, spicy was only used to describe things that could hurt you. But Jiho was talking about spicy like it was a good thing, like it was something he enjoyed. He was actually offering to share his poison with them. We couldn't," Velnara finally managed to say. "Our species We don't consume toxins. Jiho looked confused. Toxins, this isn't toxic, it's just fermented vegetables with some chili peppers. It's actually really good for you. Lots of vitamins and probiotics. Velnara looked at her scanner again. The readings hadn't changed. According to every instrument she had, Jiho was holding a container full of biological weapons. But he was, calling it healthy food. As Jiho walked back to his table, still smiling and humming, Velnara and Thexmol exchanged looks of pure terror. They had discovered something that challenged everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. Humans weren't just surviving poison consumption, they were seeking it out. They were enjoying it. They were making it stronger on purpose. And somehow they were calling it lunch. Dr. Velnara couldn't sleep that night. The image of Jiho eating what her scanners called deadly poison kept playing in her mind over and over again. She had to know more. She had to understand how humans could do this impossible thing. But studying them from far away wasn't giving her the answers she needed. The next morning, she made a decision that would have gotten her fired from any other research project. She was going to break protocol. She was going to make direct contact with humans and ask them to help her understand their strange eating habits. Dr. Thexmol thought she had lost her mind. "You want to do what?" he asked, his skin turning that worried purple color again. "Velnara, these creatures eat poison for fun. What if they try to feed us some of their toxic food?" But Velnara had made up her mind. She packed her bioprotection suit, her emergency medical kit, and every scanner she could carry. If she was going to solve this mystery, she needed to get closer to the source. The human food court on Station Kepler 7 was busier than she had ever seen it. Dozens of humans sat at tables, all of them eating different types of food that made her scanners go crazy with warning signals. The air itself seemed to be filled with dangerous particles that her equipment kept trying to filter out. She found Donghyun working behind the counter of a small restaurant. He was a middle-aged human with kind eyes and flour on his apron. Steam rose from several large pots behind him, and the smell coming from his kitchen made Velnara's protective mask work overtime to keep the toxic fumes away from her breathing apparatus. "Excuse me," she said, approaching his counter carefully. "I am Dr. Velnara from the Axiom Research Collective. I am studying human eating habits for scientific purposes." Donghyun smiled warmly and wiped his hands on his apron. "Oh, a food scientist, that's wonderful. Are you interested in trying some Korean cuisine? I've got some great dishes today." Velnara's scanners immediately started beeping at the mention of trying human food. "Actually, I was hoping you could help me understand something. My instruments suggest that human food contains substances that are dangerous to most life forms." Donghyun looked puzzled. "Dangerous? I don't think so. I mean, I use fresh ingredients, follow all the health codes. Everything I make is perfectly safe." This was exactly what Velnara was afraid of. The humans didn't even realize they were eating poison. "Perhaps you could prepare something very mild for my research, something safe for sensitive digestive systems?" Donghyun's face lit up with understanding. "Oh, you have food allergies. No problem at all. I can make you something super gentle. How about some simple soup? I'll make it just like baby food, very mild and easy to digest." Velnara felt a small wave of relief. Baby food. That sounded safe. Even humans wouldn't feed poison to their babies, right? She watched through her protective visor as Donghyun began preparing the soup. He moved with practiced skill, adding what looked like harmless vegetables to a pot of clear broth. Her scanners were mostly quiet, showing only minimal readings. Maybe this would actually work. But then Donghyun reached for a small container on his spice rack. The moment he opened it, Velnara's equipment started buzzing with low-level warnings. He sprinkled just a tiny amount of black powder into the soup, stirring it gently. "There we go," he said proudly. "Simple vegetable soup, with just a touch of seasoning. This is as mild as it gets." Velnara stared at her readings. Even this baby food was registering as mildly toxic. Not enough to kill anyone immediately, but still dangerous by galactic standards. She called Dr. Thexmol over to help with the testing. Thexmol arrived wearing full bioprotection gear, looking like he was about to handle radioactive waste. "Are you sure about this?" he asked through his suit's communication system. "It's the mildest thing they can make," Velnara replied. "If we're going to understand humans, we have to try." Thexmol activated his emergency medical monitoring systems and lifted a small spoonful of the soup to his suit's feeding tube. The moment the liquid touched his system, everything went wrong. His tentacles, which were normally a calm blue color, started flashing through the entire spectrum like a broken rainbow. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, and colors that didn't even have names. The change was so rapid and bright that other customers in the food court stopped eating to stare. But that wasn't the worst part. Thexmol started talking, but instead of normal words, mathematical equations poured out of his mouth. The square root of 144 equals 12, and the derivative of x squared is 2x, while the integral of sin x equals negative cosine x plus c. Velnara watched in horror as her research partner continued spouting mathematics for hours. She couldn't get him to stop. Every question she asked was answered with geometric theorems and algebraic formulas. Dongyun rushed over with a worried expression. "Is your friend okay? Should I call the medical bay?" "This is your mild food?" Velnara asked, pointing at her still calculating colleague. Dongyun looked genuinely embarrassed. His face turned red, and he rubbed the back of his neck nervously. "Oh no, I'm so sorry, I completely forgot about the black pepper. My wife Hyejin always tells me I have a heavy hand with spices, even when I'm trying to be careful." Black pepper. Something so common that humans put it on everything, and it had turned her research partner into a walking mathematics textbook. Velnara looked around the food court at all the humans eating their meals normally, completely unaffected by substances that could alter alien brain chemistry. She realized that this was just the beginning. If the mildest human food could do this to Thexmol, what would happen when they encountered what humans called spicy food? The mystery was getting deeper and more dangerous with every discovery. After the soup incident with Dr. Thexmol, who was still occasionally mumbling mathematical formulas 3 days later, Dr. Velnara thought she had seen the worst of human eating habits. She was completely wrong. It was a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Velnara had set up her observation equipment in the station's main recreational area, hoping to document more normal human behavior. Maybe she could find some humans who ate safe, non-toxic foods. Maybe the ones she had met before were just unusual cases. That's when she saw Sunwoo. He was a human engineer, still wearing his work uniform with grease stains on his hands. He looked tired after what must have been a long shift repairing the station's systems. Velnara watched him sit down at a table with a tray full of what looked like a normal meal, but when she pointed her scanner at his tray, her equipment nearly exploded with warning signals. Sunwoo had 3 different items on his tray, and according to her instruments, each one was deadly enough to kill most known species. He wasn't just eating one type of poison like the other humans she had observed. He was eating 3 different poisons at the same time. "This can't be happening," she whispered to herself, frantically adjusting her scanner settings to make sure they weren't malfunctioning. The first item was a dark brown liquid in a clear bottle. Her scanner identified it as ethanol, a substance that literally dissolved living cells from the inside out. The Galactic Council had banned ethanol as a chemical weapon after the Zephyrian Wars because it was too dangerous to use even in combat. But Sunwoo was drinking it. Not just sipping it carefully, but taking long, satisfied gulps like it was water. The second item was even worse. It was a dark, rectangular block that looked innocent enough, but her scanner was practically screaming warnings about it. Theobromine, her equipment identified. A cardiac disruptor that caused immediate heart failure in over 90% of known species. Sunwoo broke off a piece and popped it into his mouth with obvious pleasure. He even closed his eyes and smiled as he chewed it. The third item made Velnara's head spin. A steaming cup of black liquid that registered as pure caffeine concentrate. A neural overstimulator that could cause permanent brain damage or instant death depending on the species. The Metharians used diluted versions of it to torture prisoners of war. Sunwoo was drinking it like it was medicine he needed to feel better. "He's consuming 3 different lethal substances simultaneously, Velnara documented into her recording device, her voice shaking with disbelief. Subject is ingesting ethanol, theobromine, and caffeine in quantities that should have resulted in immediate cardiac arrest and neural shutdown. Instead, subject appears relaxed and is showing signs of enjoyment. She watched in fascination and horror as Sunwoo alternated between all 3 substances. A sip of the ethanol, a bite of the theobromine block, a drink of the caffeine liquid. Any one of these should have killed him within minutes. Together they should have destroyed his body in seconds. Instead, Sunwoo looked more relaxed with each passing minute. His shoulders loosened up, he started humming quietly, and he even began reading something on his personal device while continuing to consume the toxic combination. That's when Yeji sat down at his table. Yeji was another human, a young woman with bright eyes and a friendly smile. She took one look at Sunwoo's tray and laughed. "Rough day at work?" she asked. "Beer, dark chocolate, and coffee? That's your stress relief combo, isn't it?" Velnara's scanner picked up their conversation, and she listened in amazement. Yeji was talking about the deadly substances like they were normal everyday items. She even seemed to recognize the combination as something humans did regularly when they were tired. "You know," Yeji continued, settling into her chair, "this is nothing compared to what my friend Minho makes for his weekend barbecue parties. Last time he made his special sauce, my brother Taehyung cried actual tears of joy." Velnara leaned forward, suddenly very interested. If humans had reactions that strong to their food, maybe she was finally getting somewhere in understanding their biology. "What kind of sauce, Kyeon?" she heard Sunwoo ask. Yeji's eyes lit up with excitement. "Oh, it's incredible. He starts with ghost peppers, you know, the really hot ones. Then he adds Carolina Reapers, some scorpion peppers, a bunch of habaneros, and this fermented chili paste that his grandmother smuggled off Earth in her suitcase." Velnara's scanner started beeping frantically as it tried to identify and catalog each ingredient Yeji mentioned. Every single item was registering as a biological weapon. "But that's not even the best part," Yeji continued enthusiastically. "He also adds this homemade vinegar that he's been aging for 3 years, some kind of pepper extract that he orders from a specialty farm, and then he finishes it with what he calls the secret ingredient, but won't tell anyone what it is." By now, 3 other alien researchers had joined Velnara's observation team. They were all listening to Yeji's description with growing horror. One of them, a crystalline named Zithkor, started making worried clicking sounds that meant he was about to panic. "The last batch was so good that Taehyung couldn't even speak for 10 minutes, Yeji said with obvious pride. He just sat there with tears streaming down his face, nodding and giving thumbs up. That's when Dr. Klex Mori, a Vorthon observer, made a sound like a dying engine and collapsed. His breathing apparatus couldn't handle the stress of imagining such concentrated toxins. 2 other aliens started showing signs of shock, their skin changing colors rapidly as their bodies tried to process what they were hearing. Velnara had to call for emergency medical evacuation for 3 members of her research team. They hadn't even seen the barbecue sauce. They had just listened to someone describe it, and that was enough to cause severe psychological trauma. Meanwhile, Sunwoo finished his triple poison meal, stretched contentedly, and asked Yeji if she thought Minho would share his recipe. The humans weren't just surviving these toxins, they were actively seeking out stronger and more dangerous combinations. And somehow, they were calling it entertainment. Word spread quickly through the galactic research community about Dr. Velnara's discoveries. Scientists, diplomats, and curious beings from dozens of different worlds wanted to see the impossible humans for themselves. But some of them wanted to do more than just observe. They wanted to experience human food firsthand. Dr. Velnara tried to talk them out of it. She showed them her data, her medical reports, and even played recordings of Dr. Thek Small reciting calculus formulas. But nothing could convince them that human food was as dangerous as she claimed. "Perhaps your species is simply more sensitive than ours," suggested Ambassador Krikstal from the Matharian Diplomatic Corps. "My people have eaten plant matter from 17 different toxic worlds. How dangerous could human vegetables be?" That's how the idea for controlled testing began. If aliens were going to try human food anyway, Dr. Velnara reasoned, it would be safer to do it under medical supervision with emergency equipment standing by. She contacted Jiwan, a human cultural liaison who worked on the station. Jiwan was known for organizing events that helped different species understand each other better. When Velnara explained what she wanted to do, Jiwan was immediately excited. A cultural food exchange, Jiwan exclaimed. This is perfect. Food is one of the best ways to understand a culture. I can set up everything we need in Conference Room 7. It's big enough for medical equipment and has good ventilation systems. Dr. Velnara felt nervous about Jiwan's enthusiasm, but she agreed to the plan. Word went out through official channels, and within days, volunteers from 12 different species had signed up for what Jiwan cheerfully called the Great Galactic Tasting Event. The humans, of course, had no idea how dangerous this was going to be. Kyungsu was the human they chose to prepare the food samples. He was a teacher who worked with alien children on the station, so he had experience being gentle and patient with non-human species. When Jiwan explained that the aliens needed very mild food because they had sensitive stomachs, Kyungsu nodded knowingly. Oh, like when I make food for the little kids in my class, he said. No problem. I'll make everything super mild and easy to digest. The day of the event, Conference Room 7 looked more like a medical facility than a dining room. Dr. Velnara had arranged for emergency medical teams from 6 different species to be standing by. Portable hospital equipment lined the walls. The air filtration system was running at maximum power. 12 alien volunteers sat at a large table, all wearing protective gear and biomonitors. They looked like they were about to handle dangerous chemicals rather than taste food. The medical teams watched nervously from the sides of the room. On the other side of the room, 5 humans sat at their own table, looking completely relaxed. Jiwan had brought her friends to help make the aliens feel more comfortable. Besides Kyungsu, there was Seoyeon, a station engineer, and 2 other humans who worked in the cultural exchange program. Kyungsu stood up with a cheerful smile. Welcome everyone, I've prepared some very mild Korean dishes that I think you'll all enjoy. We'll start with the gentlest flavors possible. He brought out small bowls filled with what looked like harmless red sauce. This is sweet and sour sauce, he explained. It's what we give to children who are just learning to eat grown-up food. Very mild, very gentle. Dr. Velnara's scanner immediately started beeping. The sauce was registering as mildly toxic, but not dangerously so. Maybe this would actually work. Ambassador Krikstal volunteered to go first. He was a proud Matharian with natural armor plating and 3 hearts, built to survive in harsh environments. If anyone could handle human food, it would be him. How much should I try? He asked through his translator device. Just a tiny taste, Dr. Velnara advised. The smallest possible amount. Krikstal used a special probe to collect what looked like less than a drop of the sauce. The amount was so small it was barely visible. He touched it to his feeding apparatus and waited. For about 10 seconds, nothing happened. The medical monitors showed normal readings. Dr. Velnara started to hope that maybe this would be successful. Then Krikstal started changing colors. His natural gray skin shifted to bright yellow, then orange, then red. His 3 hearts started beating at different speeds, creating a rhythm that sounded like broken machinery. His translator device began making sounds that nobody had ever heard before. Flavors, he gasped through the translator. Flavors that don't exist in our dimension. I can taste colors that have no names. I can hear the sauce singing mathematical songs. That's when he collapsed. The medical team rushed forward as alarms started going off throughout the room. Krikstal's vital signs were doing things that Matharian physiology wasn't supposed to be able to do. His armor plating was shifting through, colors that hadn't been seen since the creation of his home star. We need to evacuate the conference level, the chief medical officer announced. His biosignature is affecting the station's sensors. Within minutes, 3 entire decks of the station had to be cleared. Krikstal's reaction to less than a drop of sweet and sour sauce was creating energy readings that interfered with navigation, equipment. Ships couldn't dock safely until the medical team got him stabilized. It took 6 hours and medical experts from 4 different species to bring Krikstal back to normal consciousness. When he finally woke up, he could only say one thing. The sauce showed me the true nature of reality, and reality is much spicier than I thought. Meanwhile, the humans had been watching all of this with growing confusion. Seo-yun, who had been quietly observing the chaos, turned to Kyung-soo with an innocent expression. "Should I tell them that wasn't even the spicy version?" she asked. "That was just the kid-friendly sauce you make for the 5-year-olds. The remaining alien volunteers immediately withdrew from the experiment. 3 more required medical attention, just from hearing that the sauce that had hospitalized a Matharian diplomat was considered suitable for human children. Ji-won tried to salvage the cultural exchange by suggesting they just watch humans eat instead of trying the food themselves. But even that proved too much for most of the aliens to handle. The event became known throughout the galaxy as the Great Tasting Disaster, and new regulations were put in place requiring warning labels on all human food containers. But the humans still didn't understand what all the fuss was about. 6 months after the Great Tasting Disaster, Dr. Velnara sat in her laboratory, staring at a mountain of data that would change how the galaxy viewed humans forever. Her research had grown far beyond what she originally planned. What started as a simple study of human eating habits had become the most important xenobiological discovery in galactic history. Her final breakthrough came while observing 2 humans in the station's food court during what they called lunch rush. She had been documenting human behavior for weeks, but these 2 individuals pushed her understanding to completely new levels. Youngman was a cargo handler who worked the morning shift loading supply ships. During his break, he sat down with a plate of what he casually called ghost pepper wings. Dr. Velnara's equipment registered the capsicum levels as high enough to use as crowd control weapons on most civilized worlds. But Youngman was eating them like they were normal food, even licking his fingers to get every bit of the deadly sauce. At the same table, Da-hyun was slurping down a bowl of what she described as extra hot ramen. The steam rising from her bowl was setting off chemical alarms on Velnara's sensors. The spice concentration was so intense that the air above the bowl was literally dangerous to breathe for most species. But Da-hyun was not only eating it, she was sweating happily and asking the server if they had anything spicier. Subject Youngman has consumed approximately 47 individual units of biological warfare agents in wing form, Dr. Velnara recorded into her device. Subject Da-hyun has ingested liquid fire equivalent to what my species uses for industrial cleaning. Both subjects appear to be enjoying the experience and have requested additional servings. She watched Youngman pause between wings to chat with Da-hyun about weekend plans as if he wasn't currently eating substances that could strip paint. Meanwhile, Da-hyun was taking pictures of her ramen to send to friends, proud of finding something that was finally spicy enough for her taste. Dr. Velnara's final report took her 3 weeks to write and ran over 400 pages. She had to create entirely new scientific categories to describe what humans were capable of. The document became required reading at every major university and research institution across 17 different star systems. The Galactic Council called an emergency session to discuss her findings. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered to hear about the impossible humans who treated lethal toxins as entertainment. The session lasted for 3 days, with many delegates requiring medical attention, just from listening to descriptions of human food. In the end, the council made an unprecedented decision. Humans were officially classified as biological extremophiles, a category that had never existed before. They were declared a protected species, not because they were endangered, but because they were so unique that losing them would be a tragedy for scientific understanding. The Human Culinary Safety Protocol was established immediately. All human food had to be labeled with warning signs in 47 different languages. Special storage requirements were put in place for human spices, which were now regulated like dangerous chemicals. Trading human food across species lines required special permits and hazmat certification. But the most surprising development came from an unexpected source. Wu Jin, the maintenance worker who had innocently offered kimchi to Dr. Velnara months earlier, suddenly found himself famous across the galaxy. His simple act of sharing lunch had started the entire research project. The Galactic Council appointed him as the first official interspecies food safety consultant, a job that nobody, knew existed until they created it specifically for him. Wu Jin was completely bewildered by his sudden importance. "I just wanted to share my wife's cooking," he told reporters. "I still don't understand what the big deal is. It's just fermented cabbage." The phrase "just fermented cabbage" became a galactic meme used to describe anything that seemed harmless, but was actually incredibly dangerous. Meanwhile, a human entrepreneur named Jisoo saw an opportunity in all the chaos. She had been running a small restaurant that served traditional Korean food to the human population on the station, but after Dr. Velnara's research became public, she realized there might be a market for human food among adventurous aliens. Working with xenobiologists and medical experts, Jisoo developed the first human food products that were safe for alien consumption. She had to dilute her recipes by factors of hundreds or even thousands. Her ultra-mild kimchi was so watered down that humans couldn't even taste it, but for aliens it provided the most extreme culinary experience of their lives. The business was an instant success. Wealthy aliens from across the galaxy traveled to Station Kepler 7 just to try Jisoo's specially prepared human food. Her ultra-mild kimchi sold for 500 credits per gram, making it more expensive than most precious metals. Aliens would buy tiny containers as gifts for friends or keep them as conversation pieces. "I never imagined that making food less spicy would make me rich," Jisoo laughed during interviews. "My grandmother would be so confused. She always told me to add more flavor, not less." The waiting list for reservations at Jisoo's restaurant stretched for months. Alien food critics wrote lengthy reviews comparing the experience to touching the face of enlightenment and understanding the true meaning of sensation. Some aliens claimed that even her mildest dishes had given them spiritual experiences. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about the entire situation was that humans remained almost completely unaware of their newfound fame. They knew that aliens found their food interesting, but they didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal about it. Human children continued to eat snacks that could hospitalize adult aliens. Human teenagers still competed to see who could handle the spiciest food. Human adults kept adding hot sauce to everything without thinking twice about it. They went about their daily lives, eating their normal meals, completely oblivious to the fact that the rest of the galaxy considered their breakfast routine to be the equivalent of extreme sports. To humans, they were just eating food. To everyone else in the universe, they were performing death-defying stunts 3 times a day. Dr. Velnara's research had proven something incredible. Humans didn't just survive in a hostile universe, they thrived in it. And somehow, they had turned survival itself into a form of entertainment, one meal at a time.